The numbers from Milwaukee's Sinai Samaritan Medical Center illustrate the problem. Of the 4,000 births at the center in 1995, 1 in 3 were to mothers under 20. Over 200 babies were born to girls 15 to 17, and 52 of the births were to girls 14 or younger. Milwaukee's rate of teen pregnancy is one of the highest in the nation.
The whole fabric of the community suffers when babies have babies. It affects our economy, it affects our social structure, it affects our spirituality.
Jenkins was among those on hand as the campaign for our children got underway recently. The abstinence-based campaign is aimed at children in middle school and under, ages 9 to 14. Legislation to bring the program to Milwaukee was introduced by Alderman Michael Murphy, who serves as co-chair of the campaign.
One of the most important concerns of our community and for our long-term future are certainly our children. And the issue of teenage pregnancy is critical to that future.
The campaign will try to influence attitudes about sex among 9 to 14-year-olds by combining in-school and other community programs with a mass media campaign, including television announcements.
Come on, everybody does it.
Not me.
It's no big deal. You want to be a virgin forever?
You just don't get it.
Where are you going? Teach your kid it's not a dirty word.
This campaign is really quite important for the future of our city. It's a campaign that's trying to change perceptions and also trying to change attitudes among our teens. That sexually active in an age group between 9 and 14 is just inappropriate. And that we're trying to encourage through the use of the media, both print, radio, and TV, along with working cooperatively with our Milwaukee Public Schools, our churches, and our parents to reinforce the message of abstinence between that level of 9 through 14 and hoping to continue that message as they get older.
Funding for the Campaign for Our Children program comes from the public and private sectors. The campaign is similar to one in Baltimore that has helped reduce teen pregnancy, stressing abstinence.
And that's true. It's the only proven method that has worked. Other methods are being tried, talked about, and I'm not here to say anything bad about them, but we do know from studies in Atlanta and other places that abstinence is a technique that can work. Children are emotional people. Teenagers are emotional people. Their hormones are just jumping all over them. And they need simple, clear advice. And it's important that those moral values, traditional moral values that have served all civilizations all over the world throughout the entire history of human relationships, be reinforced. And that's what this does.
While it was initiated by the city, the effort will require the efforts of everyone in the community, and public and private groups have pledged their support.
We want all of our students to make good decisions, good, solid decisions, and therefore things such as abstinence become very important.
I think that the other side of this campaign is that we should be looking towards giving our children hope for the future and also giving them a chance to achieve the American dream. And that would be the exchange. That would be what we ultimately want to instill in our children, our young people, that there's something else for them out there, that they can achieve a better life and a happier life for all of them.
Teen pregnancy costs the community millions of dollars a year. Girls who become pregnant in their teens are less likely to finish school and achieve economic independence. Their infants are more likely to require extensive medical attention. You have to get the youngsters' attention to convince them to avoid early sexual relationships. The new ad campaign is meant to do just that.
I love you.
I love you too.
Come on, let's do it then.
All brain cells to battle stations in conflict.
We love each other. Why not?
Girl, we are only 15.
We could get pregnant.
Half of teen pregnancies occur within 6 months of first sexual intercourse.
But it feels right.
One word.
Not to mention catching syphilis, gonorrhea.
We don't want to lose him.
Just tell the truth.
We love him,
But we're not ready.
okay, that makes sense. I want to wait.
This is the Milwaukee Police Department. Anybody inside the building? Coming out now. I'm sending in a police dog.
Suspects who are trying to elude the police canine unit always get that warning before the dog is taken off the leash. Tracking suspects and searching buildings is one of the most important jobs of these canine cops, and those who work with them sometimes owe their lives to the dogs.
My dog located a suspect hiding behind a water heater type area, and where the suspect was hiding, when I came around a corner where my dog was barking at him, the suspect was armed with a screwdriver in a threatening manner, actually. And the dog, I could have been seriously hurt or even killed, and I feel that my dog just saved me on that one, and that one I always remember.
Police say when suspects hear that a dog is in on the search or has them cornered, they often decide they can't run and turn themselves in. The canine unit was started to not only make use of the dog's special abilities, but to offer extra protection to the officers.
I think the officer's safety that the dog provides to the officer is unmeasurable, and also the ability for them to find somebody in a large warehouse or even in a house. They can do it so much faster than a human because they can pick up the scent of the person in the building, that the amount of time that's saved from this officer searching it by themselves is just tremendous.
The Canine Patrol started in 1990 and operates out of the 1st District Station in downtown Milwaukee. Squad cars are adapted so that the dogs can travel with the officer at all times. The handler and animal not only work together, the dogs also live in the officer's home during off-duty hours. 3 dogs are currently active in the program: Quanto, Doister, and Fax, the 4-legged companions of Officers Sue Black, Dave Conroy, and John Sullivan. The German Shepherds are popular because of their backgrounds as patrol dogs in Europe, where their training begins. The officers spend a lot of time in obedience training, saying it's vital the dogs be well-behaved and under control at all times. The training provides the basic structure for all their activities.
Nice to hear. Nice to putz. Here.
Most of the commands are given in German, but the dogs are somewhat bilingual. If an officer is away from the squad car and the dog and suddenly needs the animal, help is on the way with a push of a button.
Quanto, here. Come on, good boy, good boy, good boy.
All the canine vehicles or the canine squads have on them what's called a bailout system, where if the officer is away from his car and something happens to the officer suddenly needs his dog for some reason, from a remote button on his belt, he can push the button and it opens up the door, and then the dog will immediately follow the handler's commands, either come to the handler or go to where the handler directs them.
In addition to regular patrol duties, this canine unit is also used to search for narcotics. There are other Milwaukee police dogs whose primary job is to look for illegal drugs. They work with the Drug Interdiction Unit of the Vice Control Division, searching for suspected drug shipments coming into the city.
The Drug Interdiction Unit was started in May of 1992, and in May of 1993 we received 2 dogs that were customs trained for drug sniffing. We have 2 handlers that are trained with these dogs.
This police department tape shows results of a search by the unit of an auto from Texas. A nervous suspect gave the dogs permission to search. In the trunk, police found panels leading to 2 special compartments in the gas tank. 36 pounds of marijuana were found. Police also recovered crack cocaine and a gun in the vent area inside the rear door. For the dogs in the patrol and narcotics unit, the search for drugs is a game, one that begins with a toy and a tug-of-war with a handler.
It's actually a game to them. What they're actually looking for is they're looking for their toy, which we use a canvas sack which has the scent of a narcotic, but not an actual narcotic. And they're actually looking for their toy. They don't really care about the drugs itself. They're just looking for their toy, because once they find the narcotic, they'll get their toy, and then the handler will play a game of tug of war with them, which is what their ultimate goal is to play tug of war with their handler and have a good time.
It may be a game to the dogs, but it's serious police business when they're called into action. Is the canine unit that important?
I believe it is, 100%.
Well-trained and disciplined, members of the Canine Corps are normally mild-mannered, and when they retire, they usually stay with the officer who trained them. But if you've broken the law, you'll find them responding in a much different manner, and when they speak, it's best to listen. When the leaves that are supposed to be up here end up down there, you know it's autumn and time for the City of Milwaukee Fall Leaf Collection.
Picking up leaves efficiently was always a problem, and as you know, in the past, a lot of the leaves would just go into the old garbage cans before the days of the landfill bans. Well, you can't do that anymore, and our system has evolved into a rather efficient system with having people raking them out to the curb in the fall. We pick them up with collection packers that are very efficient. We have them modified with ramps and hoppers and other attachments like that, so we get very big loads, and all the leaves then are taken out and composted. And you know, the urban forest is getting bigger and bigger with every year as the trees that were planted to replace the elms have matured. So it becomes a bigger problem for us each season.
The type of equipment used in your neighborhood depends on the makeup of the street and the size of the trees. The time depends on when the leaves drop, so it can vary slightly from year to year, but typically begins around the second week of October. City crews picked up 10,000 tons of leaves last year from our expanding urban forest.
It was just a few years ago we were using 20 of the collection packers to pick up the leaves, and last year we were using at least 30. So we have to adjust accordingly and shuffle our resources. But there's a very small window depending on how quickly winter sets in. For example, last year we caught several early snows, and we wound up plowing leaf piles back out to the curb where they basically stayed all winter long. So we did, for the first time in my memory, we had a special spring leaf collection program this year to pick that up.
Brush or branches on leaf piles can create problems for city equipment, so you're asked to either call for a special pickup or take the material to a self-help center for disposal. Some garden debris is okay, but no plastic bags.
Yeah, for the leaves that go into the street, absolutely, because we compost everything that's picked up, and we can't have the plastic bags, or we'd like them to leave it loose. And it's also an opportunity in the fall for people to clean out their gardens, whether they be flower or vegetable, and get their vines and their plants and things, and put those right along, put them right on top of the leaf piles. We don't like that to be put out separately, but as you're doing your leaves, you can put that material out too. People also ask a lot about vegetables. Well, that's really a food waste. That should go in the garbage, but as far as the vines or the plants, put them right out on top of the leaf piles.
Leaf piles can be attractive to kids, so don't drive through them or park on top of them.
I don't think there's a year go by where there isn't a car fire or two from parking on top of a leaf pile. The hot catalytic converter will ignite dry leaves, and it's always dangerous to drive through a pile. It could be children playing in it, or any other type of debris might be in there. So we strongly recommend that people stay away from the leaves. When we consolidate the piles, we'd like it if people would give us clearance so that we can get at them to pick them up, and also try not to rake leaf piles right on top of catch basins or sewers and cause that type of a problem.
And remember, there are alternatives to raking your leaves into the street.
Unless the leaves are just too heavy, as I do a double cut, and it makes good mulch for my own lawn. So you can always use them at home, or you can have your own compost pile and use the leaves in your gardens and other areas. And we also have the self-help centers that are open year-round. We just hope that we don't get any significant snow through at least Thanksgiving. We'd like to get, we try to get all the leaves up by Thanksgiving, and it helps us a lot if people don't put additional piles out after the cutoff date, because in all likelihood it'll be missed, or we'll have to try to get back around special to get it. And then if we do have the luxury of another week or so, we try to sweep the whole city one more time, one final clean sweep before winter sets in.
They tell me I got a hell of a temper. Well, I don't know. I figure it took a lot of restraint not to kill her.
I want him out of here. I'm sick of getting beat on.
Judy, is there any weapons involved?
I don't know. He's bringing up my house. He said, I'll kill you if you do anything to me. He said, you call the cops tonight, I'm going to kill you. Well, you see what he did. He pulled the phone. I can't take this anymore.
It's a very dynamic situation. People get killed during these situations. Officers get hurt. Small children are pulling at your pants legs, why are you taking daddy to jail? They're the true victims as far as I'm concerned. It shatters a family, it really does.
Like society in general, police in the past often looked on domestic violence as a family, not a criminal matter. But attitudes have changed, and Milwaukee police began a mandatory arrest policy of batterers before it became a state law.
We took strides. We actually took steps to contact women's groups in 1985 and actually came about with the first domestic violence mandatory arrest policy for battery prior to it being a state law 3 years later. So we took steps and have been a leader ever since in regards to the law enforcement perspective with domestic violence. We've changed through the years to a mandatory arrest policy, a mandatory reporting policy, a pro-prosecution policy in the DA's office, work regularly with women's support groups to understand and address their concerns. We've made great strides in the last 30 years, really have.
Milwaukee police investigated over 13,000 domestic abuse-related incidents in 1995. There are now 3 full-time domestic violence courts in Milwaukee County to deal with that volume. As many as 200 new cases of domestic violence enter the court system each week, an estimated 5,000 to 7,000 cases per year. The victim often takes part of the blame.
I was also yelling things at him and swinging to hit him as well.
Even if she puts up with it and minimizes what you did, as she did in her testimony here today, the community's not going to put up with it.
I'm sure that almost every single domestic violence case that I have seen involves drugs or alcohol. That's part of it. But the other parts of it are the same kind of societal stresses we see everywhere.
About half the cases in Judge Brennan's court are resolved through trial or guilty pleas. Nearly half are dismissed when the victim fails to appear.
The dynamics, the human dynamics, are very complicated. A woman might not show up for trial, although she's been badly beaten, because she is dependent on the perpetrator's income, or because she's frightened of retaliation from him, or because pressure from his family or her family, who are her family also. There are so many social dynamics going on that very often the victims won't appear for trial. Normally, 44% of the cases are dismissed on a trial day like today because the victim hasn't shown up. But you may have noticed that some of those cases the state was proceeding even though the victim didn't show up, because they were able to use some different legal theories to proceed. And that's happening more and more. So more of these cases are being resolved.
Even though 44% of the cases are dismissed, the judge believes the domestic violence courts have been successful.
Nothing was working before we tried these courts. The domestic violence problem was growing astronomically. These courts are at least addressing it. There are 50% of these cases are resolved. There's structure, there's resolution, there's counseling for the families involved in these cases, and that's going to have a positive, beneficial effect. It's not perfect yet, but it is, I'm sure, helping our societal problem with domestic violence.
Greater documentation is needed in many domestic violence cases because of problems with victims not appearing in court, and that is happening.
We're modifying police reports right now. We're looking into gathering that type of information that the district attorney needs to ensure prosecution, even though the complainant does not want to show up or does not wish to prosecute the matter any further. So based upon those requirements, we're modifying our reports to include that information to enhance the chance of a successful court case.
Police in the 5th District will also soon be teaming with domestic abuse social workers in an approach different from almost any in the nation. A federal grant to police and ASHA Family Services will fund a crisis intervention team.
I believe this team is going to be very successful. I'm a formerly battered woman, so a lot of what I speak of is based on my own experiences and looking at the things that I needed. What would have worked for me? What did I wish had been there? And this team, having this team is phenomenal.
Under that pilot program, ASHA family advocates skilled in a variety of social services and a police officer will assist the victim with immediate needs and help gather evidence and other information to assist prosecutors.
To gather a body of evidence, go in, get footage of the scene, the demeanor of the victim, and put all of these pieces together with this film, with these still photos, and along with the spontaneous utterance. The prosecution team wouldn't necessarily need her to take part in the prosecution.
While getting more help from the criminal justice system, battered women continue to be helped by safe shelters, such as Sojourner Truth House.
I myself was, as a young child, or I should say teenager, a victim of domestic violence. I grew up in a domestic violent home, extremely violent. And I feel that I wanted to turn that into something positive. And by doing that, I decided to donate my time by volunteering, helping out in the home in any way that I could. And I wanted to turn that negative, emotional aspect of my life into something positive. And I knew that I could do that here at Sojourner.
Before I picked up the phone to call Sojourner Truth House, there was a lot of thoughts going through my mind. Will they trust me? Will they believe me? Will they help me? Will they help my children?
A lot of women are afraid to call, but they should know that Sojourner is a place that you can call. And you can call 24 hours a day. That's another thing people don't know.
When I think of Sojourner Truth House, when I hear the word, there is truth. You learn truth. You learn safe. You learn that you're going to be okay, and they are going to tell you the truth. They're not going to tell you a bunch of lies.
Good morning, Sojourner Truth House. May I help you?
The domestic violence hotline, operated in conjunction with Sojourner, marked its 10th year of service this year. It's the place police contact when they respond to domestic violence calls.
When a domestic violence situation occurs and the police goes to the scene of the crime, after speaking to the parties that are involved and establishing who the victim is and who the perpetrator is, then the police officer calls Sojourner Truth House, because our number, which is 24 hours, has been designated as the domestic violence hotline number in Milwaukee.
After obtaining information from the officer, a shelter worker then talks to the victim to offer support and help.
At that point, the worker is basically re-emphasizing some of the information that the police officer has given that victim, and also talking about safety issues. Okay, the suspect was arrested. Are you going to be safe staying in your home tonight? Or is there somewhere else you feel comfortable and safe staying for tonight or for the next couple of days? Or would shelter be an option for you? So those kinds of things are explored right away.
Individuals can also call the hotline, which has answered more than 150,000 calls since May of 1986.
We didn't have a 24-hour line. We didn't have a crisis line or a domestic violence hotline. How would some of these people get the assistance they need? This is very, very necessary, and I really see it as a lifeline to people experiencing domestic violence that are in crisis.
Sojourner also operates one of several programs in Milwaukee where batterers are helped, often by those who have been in abusive situations.
I know it from having been a police officer, having been arrested for domestic violence, having come through this program, and then in turn, you know, volunteering here and working here. Our name, Batters Anonymous, right away has people a lot of times thinking physical abuse, you know, because of the battering. You know, when you say that word, people right away think of physical abuse. And what our goal, you know, ultimately is, of course, to eliminate that physical abuse, but have the guys aware, become aware that there's a lot of other ways. Some are very obvious, some are more subtle, that we abuse and control our partners, and try to get away from that. Try to, you know, not only be aware of it, but to eliminate that in our life. And also for the guys to feel better about themselves, even if they're not in a relationship.
The 23-week program brings batterers into one-on-one and group settings where they learn to be responsible for and understand their behavior.
One of the things that we really stress with the guys, we start talking about, you know, being responsible for your behavior, you know, realizing what's going on for you. Often when guys first start out the program, it was like, my partner did this, my partner did that, and I just sort of snapped. I didn't know what I was doing. So one of the things that we do is we take a week or two and we start having guys realize, you know, what's going on for them. You know, what is it that you know, like I say, they're thinking, they're feeling, and really what's important before that explosion or that blow up, we call it, is how's my body feeling? That's like the last chance that a guy can pull out, you know, disengage, calm down, take a time out before something, you know, really serious happens.
The courts, the police, women's advocates all agree that battering of a parent takes a heavy toll on children. In response, an ad campaign created by the local firm of Eisner & Associates carries the message that domestic violence is part of a generational cycle that can be broken.
If we could stop one man from hitting a woman, then we can stop 2, then 10, then 1,000, and then we can change a whole generation, and they can change the next generation if we can stop one man from hitting a woman.
The message that children are severely affected by violence between their parents is also the topic of a national Ad Council campaign.
Where's dinner?
Well, I thought you'd be home a couple of hours ago, and I put everything away. So
What is this? Pizza?
You had just called me. I would have known what
Dinner ready is pizza.
Honey, please don't be so loud. Please don't. Let go of me!
Get in the kitchen!
No!
Do you want to see